The thing is, can you do that at scale? And of course you can.
You can.
But
They
is
just don't want to.
anyone willing to?
They don't want to, and so they're playing chicken. Like for example, they were talking about how Disney Studios out here in Burbank, they cut down a bunch of trees
Oh, to keep people
off the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Off the sidewalk, especially during the
trees. It was an environmental, like, they got dragged through the mud by all the people. Like, I know about trees. Like
that's not how you actually trim them.
That's
so
that's a crime. What they
so
did
that's
to
a
those
bullshit
trees.
excuse.
Yeah,
And then like
summer,
the city,
it's 90 degrees. That is abuse to those trees.
and the city even was like, we didn't have any permits assigned to that particular thing. And this is
course they
Burbank.
wouldn't.
This is Burbank. But even Burbank has to toe the line because guess what? Disney runs Burbank essentially. You know, like Disney is
Them
one of
and
the
Warner,
big There's some of the biggest like corporations in that private city.
The corporation and then like the land that they have.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like a
they
quarter
run
of
that town.
Burbank, bro. Like, and like I don't know, man. It's just a trip because like I have a feeling it's gonna start. What we're gonna start seeing is like what happened in like, you know, like what was it when all the strikes were going on, like in the 1920s and stuff like that, where you're starting to see where things are gonna escalate to that kind of level of like corporate malfeasance, where like you'll see corporations start actively doing things that are downright criminal in order to maintain the status quo.
They already are.
Right. Like you see the trees. Okay, they didn't hurt people, but they destroy trees. But at some point, if this goes on for longer, they're gonna start. I think they're gonna start physically like affecting and harming individuals that they identify as.
Like the Russians? Or what do you mean?
I mean, I don't know, man. I'm just kind of like, I'm a cynic in that sense. I feel like at some point, you know, like what we see happens in Central America with American corporations, like American oil corporations, like murdering organizers out there, you know, like I think at some point it's going to bleed out over here.
That's sad.
But I think it's going to happen as inequality gets worse and worse and worse. I think at some point something's going to happen where like these companies are not going to be held accountable by the systems that are in place.
Yeah, well, they already aren't. They're already propped up
because because lobbying and they influence the court so much and stuff like that. Like, what did Burbank do? Burbank didn't do shit. They just said, "Oh, I don't think they have a permit." They probably gave them a permit after the fact.
And then, like, just like culturally, like from the ground up, it feels like there is no law and order anymore. We're all just kind of like
winging it.
It's in the Wild West, and no one is saying anything.
Yeah, you know, I think it's like all the elements of like a revolution, you know, like a real revolution to happen, like a social movement of all movements to happen here. Like it's all there. It's just like we just need like a spark or something. Like we see it everywhere, all the disparities, right? Like everything is there. People are organizing as well, you know, so it just depends on I don't know. There has to be something, right? There is hope, though. There is hope. Like, we know we're talking about social media and how we're all consumers. Some people on Instagram, for example, are using their platforms, right, to, for example, and this is a very specific example. I follow this Instagram person, Alex Enamorado. So he's on Instagram, and he uses his platform to protect street vendors. And so he sees, like, they send him a tip, they send him, I don't know, slide into his DMs or like a video of what happened. You know, somebody stealing or destroying a taco stand. They send him the video, and then what he does, he takes action. He goes to that place. He talks to the workers to see if they're okay. And then not only that, but he calls out a call for action. You know, and people do respond. The thousands, including myself, and I found out through a friend who said, "Hey, this is what's happening. You might be interested in this." I'm like, "Yeah." And so, you know, even one like helps, because then what that does is it recommends it to your friends, et cetera, right? So in a way, it uses that same like viral moment, but uses it as not to gain popularity. I mean, yes, but for a cause. in this cause is specifically to protect street vendors, right? So, I mean, that's just like one example that I see that gives me hope, right? If we can use the same tools that they're using, but we can use it for good, right?
It's like guerrilla social media.
Yeah.
And it's like an interesting way of working around the limitations of like these social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram that are so sterile, and there's like so many like fences as far as the type of language you can use. Like the conversation we've been having for the last 50 minutes might, trigger some red flags and say, oh, these guys are propagating revolutionary.
These guys are commies.
Yeah, like let's shadow ban these guys.
These guys are commies.
But something like, hey, there was this injustice that happened to a business person. Can people help? That type of language is probably going to get boosted by the algorithm, or at least get fair treatment, if nothing else.
Is the guy that you mentioned the guy that recently got arrested?
He's gotten arrested.
Because I had seen a post. The popularity is expanding. Where there was a guy that was getting arrested because he was helping like street vendors, and then there was another lady who got arrested because, I guess in like Texas or something, because she gave a street vendor $5 while the street vendor was getting ticketed. And so the cops like arrested her, like, and you see the video from like someone who is driving by, and they slowed down, and the lady is like, take my number, like, please send me the video. I need the video. Like, here's my number, blah, blah. And the person's like, okay. And they drive by. But it's just kind of crazy, dude. Like, there's a lot going on. And I always just like to think about the idea that, like, at the end of the day, doesn't matter where on, like, political spectrum or whatever, the idea is that most of us just want to live peacefully, to be safe, and to have a means to be able to like provide for ourselves and for our families, right? Well, everyone, thank you for listening and watching. This has been Raul.
PJ.
We hope to see you with us again.
Come back for more.
Just come back.
Like, subscribe, do all that.